Hello there, weary traveler, and welcome once more to this cozy corner of history. Tonight, we embark on a journey back to a time when winter's icy grip held far more peril than most of us could ever imagine. A time when the changing of the seasons brought not mere inconvenience, but genuine fear for survival. Picture yourself in the countryside of medieval Europe. The last leaves have long since fallen from the trees. The sun hangs low on the horizon, its pale rays doing little to warm the biting chill in the air. Frosty fields crunch underfoot as a sharp wind carries the first flurries of snow. Winter is coming. And for the people of this age, that meant one thing above all: hardship. This is the story of how men, women, and children endured the medieval winter, how castles became prisons of ice, how peasants faced famine, how disease cut through frozen villages, and yet how resilience, hope, and community lit small fires of survival through the darkest of nights. Medieval winters were not always so merciless. For centuries, the seasons followed a relatively predictable rhythm, but then, in the late Middle Ages, something began to change. The Earth entered what historians now call the Little Ice Age, lasting from roughly the 14th to the 19th century. The climate cooled. Winters grew harsher, summers shorter, and rainfall unpredictable. Harvests failed. Livestock froze in their barns. Famine and misery spread. One of the most infamous moments came in the Great Frost of 1709, when Europe experienced perhaps the coldest winter in recorded history. In London, the River Thames froze solid, not just as a crust of ice, but a thick, glittering highway. People set up shops on the frozen surface. They roasted meat, brewed beer, and even lit bonfires on the ice. To the casual observer, it might have seemed festive, a bizarre winter carnival. But for thousands who huddled in their homes without food or fuel, that frost was a death sentence. And yet, even amidst this frozen nightmare, history reminds us of unexpected silver linings. When Cambridge University shut down because of the frost, a young scholar named Isaac Newton was forced to return home to his family's farm. There, beside a crackling fire, with nothing but time and thought, he worked on ideas that would change the world forever. The foundations of calculus, optics, and gravity itself. Even in the deepest cold, the human mind found a way to burn brightly. For the vast majority, however, winter was not a time of quiet reflection. It was a season of endurance. Imagine waking in a peasant's cottage. A single room, its walls of timber or stone full of cracks where icy winds whistle through. Smoke from a sputtering fire fills the air, stinging your eyes. You rise from a straw mattress shared with your entire family, their shivering bodies pressed close through the night, your first meal of the day. If you are lucky, a coarse hunk of stale bread, perhaps softened with thin porridge. If not, there may be nothing at all. The food from last year's harvest dwindles fast. Cellars once filled with grain and salted meat now echo with emptiness. Rats scurry across the floor, nibbling at the last crumbs. Outside, your livestock huddles together, their ribs showing, their breath steaming into the frozen barn. Firewood is precious, sometimes illegal to collect without a lord's permission. Instead, families burn dried dung, straw, or whatever scraps they can find. The fire provides only meager warmth. Frost forms on the inside of your walls. Your fingers ache from cold. This was not a passing discomfort. It was a daily, grinding battle for survival. When food ran short, famine took hold. And in medieval Europe, famine was not a rare catastrophe. It was a constant threat. The most infamous came between 1315 and 1317, known as the Great Famine. An unusually wet and cold spring destroyed seedlings. Harvests failed, year after year. The crops withered. The consequences were horrifying. In England, the price of bread soared 20-fold. In Flanders, entire towns starved. Parents smothered their children as acts of mercy. Corpses lay unburied in the streets. Desperate people dug up graves to gnaw on the flesh of the dead. Contemporary accounts describe men eating dogs, horses, even their fellow humans. In just 2 years, tens of thousands perished. In some towns, 1 in 4 inhabitants died. And yet, famine was never far away, even outside those years. To be poor in winter meant living one bad harvest away from starvation. One might think the nobility, safe in their castles, escaped the misery of winter. But stone walls offered little comfort. Castles, built for defense, were drafty, damp, and bone-chillingly cold. Servants worked tirelessly to stockpile wood, seal cracks, and preserve food. Kitchens labored around the clock to salt meat, dry grain, and keep pantries full. Yet even kings and queens shivered in their chambers. Chroniclers tell of royal deaths blamed on cold exposure. Queen Elizabeth of Hungary in 1326 was said to have frozen in her own bed. Henry II of England once burned a wooden chair for warmth, and countless noblewomen, clothed in silks and satins, found those fineries utterly useless against the winter frost. Wealth provided more food, more furs, and more servants, but it did not shield the nobility from winter's icy grip. Winter was not only a season of hunger, but of sickness. Cold weather forced families into cramped quarters. The air was smoky, damp, and unventilated. Disease spread rapidly. Influenza, pneumonia, and bronchitis claimed countless lives. Malnutrition weakened immune systems. A simple cough could spiral into a death sentence. In Paris, during the winter of 1557, influenza killed more than 10,000 people. Across Europe, similar outbreaks struck like lightning. Children were the most vulnerable. In some towns, nearly half of all infants did not survive their 5th birthday, with winter-born children at particular risk. Families prepared tiny black ribbons, known as bone lace, to tie around the hands of sick infants so that if they died, the ribbon would become part of their burial shroud. And above all, winter quarters gave rise to one of history's deadliest plagues, the Black Death, packed into damp houses. Weakened by hunger, Europe's population was devastated. Between 1347 and 1351, up to 60% of the population perished. The cold did not just kill with frost, it created the perfect breeding ground for death itself. Beyond hunger and sickness, other dangers haunted the medieval winter. Fire was a constant threat. In 1212, a winter blaze tore through London, killing thousands, while frozen water supplies left firefighters helpless. Travel was perilous. Roads became quagmires or disappeared under snow. Queen Isabella of England once wandered lost in a blizzard, pregnant and weeping in terror. Even mighty kings lost treasures. King John of England's crown jewels vanished in 1216, swallowed by a winter flood. Floods, too, claimed thousands. In 1219, a North Sea storm submerged vast regions of the Netherlands, drowning more than 50,000 people. And in war, winter was a weapon. Welsh rebel Owain Glyndwr used a blizzard in 1407 to ambush English forces, turning snow into an ally of resistance. For peasants, nobles, and soldiers alike, winter was an unpredictable killer. Yet even in such dark times, the human spirit endured. The feast of St. Stephen, on December 26th, offered a moment of joy. For one day, the rigid social order was inverted. A peasant became the lord of misrule, and laughter, feasting, and song filled the coldest halls. The church opened its doors to the poor. Monasteries gave shelter and food. Nobles, too, sometimes offered charity. Lady Margaret of York once sold her jewels to provide grain for the starving. Acts of kindness became lifelines. Communities gathered for storytelling, dice games, or song by candlelight. Winter nights became times of reflection, prayer, and, sometimes, romance. St. Valentine's Day brought tokens of love, even when the earth lay frozen. The cold could bite, but it could not freeze hope. And at last, the thaw would come. Slowly, the days lengthened. Snow turned to slush. Green shoots pierced the earth. Villagers celebrated Plough Monday, blessing their ploughs and parading through the lanes, singing songs to wake the soil. Work began anew. Life returned. After months of darkness, famine, and frost, spring's arrival was more than a season. It was salvation. Today, most of us experience winter as an inconvenience. Icy sidewalks, delayed flights, perhaps a higher heating bill. But for our ancestors, winter was a battlefield, a season of hunger, disease, and survival. And yet they endured. They found joy in song, meaning in faith, and resilience in community. They faced winter's worst and still carried forward, generation after generation, until we arrived here. So the next time you shiver on a frosty morning, remember them. Remember the peasants huddled in smoky cottages, the nobles shivering in their castles, the children lost to fever, and the families who danced at midwinter feasts despite the cold. Remember that within each of us burns the same flame of resilience that carried them through the dark, because if winter teaches us anything, it is this: the human spirit is stronger than the cold.